Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Ohio EPA's first ever virtual compliance assistance conference. My name is Dan Sowery with the Division of Environmental and Financial Assistance at Ohio EPA, and I'll be moderating this morning's presentation with our Chief of the Division of Environmental Response and Revitalization, Melissa Witherspoon, our Chief of the Division of Materials and Waste Management, Vlad Sika, our Chief of the Division of Drinking and Groundwaters, Amy Cly, our Chief of our Division of Surface Water, Tiffany Cadillac, and our Chief of the Division of Air Pollution Control, Bob Hodenbosey. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items to help you participate and engage with our presenters during this morning's session. On this slide seen here, you will see a screenshot of an example of an attendee interface. You should see something that looks like this on the right-hand side of your screen. For this webinar, you are listening in using your computer audio. If you're having sound issues, try refreshing your browser. If that doesn't work, log off and log back in, or check your computer's audio settings. Please feel free to submit questions to the presenters by typing them into the questions pane on your control panel. You may send your questions in at any time during the presentation. To keep things moving, we will address questions after all chiefs have completed their presentations. And if we don't answer your question during the Q&A portion, we will reach out to you via email following today's webinar. This webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a link to the recording and a follow-up email along with the session survey. The session survey will also appear once this webinar ends. We value your feedback and would greatly appreciate it if you'd let us know how we're doing and let us know if there's anything else that we can do to further assist you. A certificate of attendance will also be included via email about a day or so after the session. This session has been approved for 1 hour of registered sanitarian and sanitarian in training credit and 1 hour of VAP certified professional development credit. If you did not submit your professional certification number in the CEU ID number box when registering, please make sure to provide us with your number through the Q&A feature. Attendees seeking American Planning Association credit may do so through APA's self-reporting option. Log into your My APA account and select the self-reported credits option to receive credit. And if you are seeking other CEUs, please refer to our conference agenda available as a handout to this presentation. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our first presenter, Chief of our Division of Environmental Response and Revitalization, Melissa Witherspoon.
Thank you, Dan. I apologize, this first slide's a little bit outdated, actually. I put this together not knowing exactly when these new rules would take effect. They took effect on Monday of this week. And our generator improvement rule package, for the most part, is less stringent and more flexible for generators. There are a couple of things that are more stringent. Example is the small quantity generator notification requirements and labeling requirements. So before we go forward, I have a quick question. Does anyone know how long the Ohio EPA has been authorized for the RCRA hazardous waste program?
Okay, the poll has been open. Go ahead and make your selections when this shows up on the screen. We'll give folks approximately 1 minute to make their selections. Okay, most folks have made their selections. We'll give it a few more seconds as we still have a few votes coming in. Okay, I'm going to close the poll, share the results.
Thank you, Dan. So the answer is 26 years. I apologize. 31 years. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong screen there. 31 years. We got final authorization in 1989. we were granted interim authorization in 1983. Another rule update is not so much that our voluntary action program did their 5-year review update in 2019, but we currently have a section of those rules out for interested party review. And the purpose of that is to incorporate our new vapor intrusion guidance into the voluntary action program. We put out 2 new documents for vapor intrusion back in March of this year. One is the technical guidance and the other is a response guidance. And these are not only applicable to the voluntary action program, but are applicable at a variety of sites. One of the changes we made was incorporating the vapor intrusion screening level into our technical guidance, along with updating to be consistent with US EPA for the lateral distance for petroleum chemicals of 30 feet and our default soil gas attenuation factor, changing it from 0.1 to 0.03, essentially meaning that less vapor enters the indoor air breathing space. Before we put out the new guidance, we did check in with interested parties, consultants, VAPCPs, volunteers, or responsible parties, and we got some feedback, and they had asked for additional information related to remedies. So in response to that, we added 3 new sections, one on remedy selection, one on remedy monitoring, and there is also a section on when you may terminate engineering controls. The second document is the response guidance, and the guiding principle for this document is this first bullet item here. If there is a potential for adverse health effects from an imminent hazard or a short-term exposure, the expectation is the responsible party will proceed in a timely manner. However, we do realize that every site is unique, so we allow some flexibility for sites to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. The best way to accomplish that is to communicate with us. It's also important that the Ohio Department of Health and local health departments be engaged if there is going to be off-site assessment in residential properties or if residents are potentially exposed above a regulatory standard. This guidance talks about mitigation systems also, but in a little different way than the technical guide, in that we want to make sure that remedies are put in place in a timely manner. So it allows for temporary remedies or mitigation systems to be installed at any time during the process rather than going through the assessment and just at the end doing remediation. Mitigation systems could be installed as a presumptive remedy, an interim action, or as a permanent remedy. And if they're installed as a permanent remedy, there's an understanding that they not only need to be effective at the beginning of their operation, but throughout the lifetime of protectiveness until the soil or groundwater contamination can be remediated. And now we have another poll question. Does anyone know how long the VAP program has been in existence?
Okay, the polls have been launched. When this shows on your screen, make your selections and we'll give folks approximately 1 minute. Okay, most folks have provided their response, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results with Melissa.
Great, Dan, thank you. And I see most people got that one right. It has been 26 years. Last year, we celebrated the 25-year anniversary of the Voluntary Action Program, and I would encourage anyone to go to our website, we still have some of the information up from that 25-year celebration, and we talk about some of the success stories of the Voluntary Action Program. And this slide is a little bit less about inspection rules probably than our relationship with the regulated community. So through the pandemic, we lost out on some time of getting out and doing inspections. And we started using the virtual site visit technology to do inspections. And we've used those at a variety of types of inspections, including BAP institutional control and hazardous waste inspections. With the virtual site visits, we were actually able to meet our numeric goals for US EPA commitments for hazardous waste inspections. And that's a huge accomplishment. And I think it's a testament not only to our staff, but also to the relationship we have with the regulated community and to the cooperation of the regulated community. So I suspect many of you who are participating in this may have been a participant in a virtual site visit with us. And I want to take this opportunity to say thank you, because we could not have accomplished this without your cooperation.
All right. Thank you very much, Melissa. To keep things moving, we'll address questions after all the chiefs have completed their presentations. Please continue to submit your questions and we will address them during the Q&A portion. Next up, we have our Chief of the Division of Materials and Waste Management, Vlad. Vlad?
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone can hear and see me okay. There we go, working. We don't really have a whole lot of time, and I did kind of want to go over a couple of things, at least on a higher level, for relating to the Division of Materials and Waste Management. I just kind of want to basically go over who we are, what we do, and under these current COVID-19 situations, how have we managed our compliance monitoring program moving forward. So, like I said, or like Dan said, I'm the Chief of the Division of Materials and Waste Management. We regulate generally solid waste. We look at solid waste. We also regulate infectious waste, construction and demolition debris, some organics and composting, scrap tires, along with recyclables. So that's the general universe of materials that we regulate. But we primarily regulate facilities that manage these materials. Those facilities are, as you would guess, landfills for the most part. Transfer facilities are included in there. Processing facilities that could include solid waste and C&DD. Infectious waste treatment facilities, composting facilities, scrap tire transporters and processors. We also deal with planning and recycling, and we provide mosquito control grants to local municipalities as well. So that's a really brief overview of what we do for the most part. Now, those are the materials and the facilities that we regulate. Now, as part of our day-to-day duties, how do we do that? We essentially review permit applications and issue permits. We do various inspections. We focus a lot of our technical staff on construction inspections during large construction events at landfills, for instance. We also do compliance inspections to make sure that the operational criteria that we have established in our rules are met. We also respond to citizens' complaints, provide technical assistance if we can. We also do, like I said, a lot of planning and recycling outreach to several local communities. And the last thing on our list is we do enforcement when necessary. But that's kind of basically what we do. And as you can imagine, a lot of that does involve field activities. But, as you all have experienced in the past 6 months, that's been kind of hindered due to the current situation. So our two big goals moving forward is, one, to protect human health and the environment. That's our mission statement for the agency and for my division as well. And we do that by working with the community and the regulated community to establish compliance with all the state laws and rules. So that, in a nutshell, that's what we do. But what we've been experiencing, and none of this is new to you folks, you've all probably experienced most of these. You know, we have a lot of field presence, or we did, but how do you manage that under the current COVID situation right now? Social distancing is a big thing, particularly for our fieldwork staff. Our office work, we've all been telecommuting since earlier this year, since March, and that's actually been working out. Although a lot of people would like to get back in the office, I think for the most part, it's been very, very effective. Now, the big impact for us is the limited field work, and so we've been trying to come up with various strategies to make sure that our goals are met, along with our interaction with the regulated community, to make sure that the environment is protected. So with that, I mean, we've kind of developed some new practices for compliance monitoring. You know, until we get to the point where everything is kind of back to normal, and who knows when that's going to be. We've kind of implemented a few strategies moving forward that, for the most part, have been pretty effective. I think a couple of them I was a little skeptical, but they have kind of played out. We've obviously experienced some challenges along the way, but we also took this as an opportunity to continue our outreach and maybe improve our communication with the regulated community and talking to them directly to address situations. That has worked out pretty well. And we're also working with our regulatory partners on the ground floor. My division is somewhat unique compared to other divisions where we have local health departments that, if they're approved, they have the authority to implement our rules and laws. So we've been working with them during this whole COVID time. They've had a separate set of challenges on their end, not just the whole social distancing issue, but because they are health departments and they had to refocus a lot of their resources for COVID response. So, but they have been able to assist us on some additional complaints, inspections, and some other compliance inspections. So we've been able to build a better relationship, stronger relationship with some of our regulatory partners. And we've also tried a few virtual inspections. And just to provide some stats, in June and July is kind of when we wanted to do kind of our own test case. We did 19 virtual inspections. Now, we primarily focused on smaller facilities that can be more easily inspected, you know, things like transfer facilities, infectious waste treatment facilities, composting facilities, and a very, very few amount of actual citizen complaints. So we did 19 of those, and for the most part, they did work. We also did 2 health department annual surveys virtually. One had some challenges. The other one actually worked out really, really well. Most of the challenges that we've experienced had to do with IT related. A lot of our facilities are located in rural Ohio, and you know, some of the connectivity is not the best out there. Wi-Fi is generally not available, and cell service can be kind of tricky. So most of the issues that we've experienced on the virtual inspection perspective have been technologically based. So we still plan on doing those moving forward, but we plan on maybe narrowing the universe of the sites that are capable of doing these virtual type of inspections, and that involves reaching out to the regulated community, determining their connectivity, self-service, all that sort of stuff before we actually go out there and do the inspection. So that's kind of what we've been working on our end to kind of address this whole situation that we've kind of all experienced during COVID-19. That's pretty much all I have. It's a very general and broad kind of presentation. We're still planning on transitioning to some level of normalcy next year, but we still plan on also using some of these virtual inspection tools that we've tried out, and to keep us doing our jobs in the field. So that's kind of all I had today.
All right. Well, thank you, Vlad. I really appreciate that. So to keep things moving, again, we'll address the questions after all the chiefs have completed their presentations. Please continue to submit your questions through the questions pane, and we will address them in the Q&A portion. So next up, we have our Chief of the Division of Drinking and Groundwaters, Amy Cly. Amy?
Hey, good morning, everybody. Appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today. It's a new world with these virtual conferences and seminars, but I think we're all starting to figure out how to make it work. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about what's going on with the Division of Drinking and Groundwaters. Just give you some updates. Let me see if I can get this to go. There we go. So what do we do in Division of Drinking and Groundwaters? Well, one of our primary programs is oversight of the public water systems across the state of Ohio. We have around 4,500. We also do some groundwater characterization work, some ambient groundwater monitoring and other work related to that program, as well as underground injection control wells. In Ohio, Ohio EPA in our division has oversight over Class 1 deep injection wells and the shallower Class 5 injection wells. The other injection wells in Ohio are oversight by Ohio Department of Natural Resources. So key things, I'm just going to give you some brief overview because our time is short today, but just a little bit about lead and copper has been a huge lift for our agency as well as water systems across the state. Our new asset management program and a little bit of operator certification updates that we have going on, and then of course emerging contaminants and PFAS. So I'll close with a little update on what we're doing with our statewide testing. So lead and copper, we had some major state rule changes a few years ago, and now the federal rule changes are coming. They, I think, did proposed rules and had over 80,000 comments nationwide. And what we're hearing is that they are still on track to finalize those rules by the end of 2020. And a lot of the proposed changes in the federal rule align with what we had already implemented in Ohio. And but the big things that we'll be looking at is removing of lead service lines is definitely a priority that we expect to see highlighted in the new federal rules. And so we've been working across the state, targeting funding and working with our systems to start that incredible effort to get all the lead service lines out. Big things that you'll see in the federal rules that do align with our state rules are strengthening treatment sampling requirements for lead and copper, identifying those most impacted areas. Again, the lead service line, the education component to customers when there are detections, and prioritizing testing for schools and childcare facilities, sorry. As part of the state rules, we've had to do lead and copper mapping, and the next revision of the state rules require those maps to be done by 2022. And it's going to be really important that water systems identify if they are lead and copper or not, because under the federal rules, if they're unknown, they're going to be assumed to be lead and copper. So you're going to see a lot more from Division about lead and copper rules coming out. Again, working closely with our systems to figure out how to get this done. Ohio's asset management program. This has been a big priority for the division. Those rules went effective 2018, and all public water systems across the state, all 4,500, are subject to developing asset management programs. We do recognize that we've got, water systems like Columbus, all the way down to Moe's Bar and Grill. And so we have tried to have these requirements right-sized for the system and have lots of templates and checklists available. We also are looking at this program to help us promote regionalization and to drive some of our source water protection programs. The big thing with asset management right now is that water systems are required to submit their metrics. And we have a new portal that has been opened, and it's open until I think the middle or end of November. And that is our DROP, Drinking Water Online Portal. So I know we've had a lot of water systems navigating this. If you have any questions with how to use this portal to submit your metrics, please call us. We've got contact information on the web. We're walking a lot of people through it every day. So let us know if you have any problems. We're really looking to see where to take this program in the future. We have what these metrics will tell us, where systems across the state are with regard to asset management. And then that will allow us to target future funding and guidance documents and outreach. So really important that systems complete those requirements for asset management. Now I'm going to shift gears and talk a little bit about PFAS and emerging contaminants. We had started originally in emerging contaminants with harmful algal blooms, and we set up a harmful algal bloom section and developed rules, and that was kind of our first emerging contaminant we worked with. We've since transitioned that section into an emerging contaminant section to start dealing with the broader issues that we're seeing. And last fall, the governor and the state of Ohio issued Ohio's PFAS action plan for drinking water. If anybody knows anything about PFAS, this is a very hot issue nationwide. States are dealing with this in many different ways. Currently, no federal drinking water standards for any PFAS compounds. And we're seeing a lot of different states take different approaches. For example, Michigan has recently finalized state MCLs for drinking water. Other states have established groundwater and other cleanup standards. In Ohio, this is our plan is to start with drinking water. So within the state's action plan, some of the objectives and one of the key objectives, starting point, is to gather sampling data on statewide occurrence in drinking water. So the other part that's identified in this action plan is we developed action levels for PFAS in drinking water for 6 compounds. So there's a lot of stuff online. You can see we're at pfas.ohio.gov. Links to the action plan, links to our updated data. We've created a lot of fact sheets, information about treatment. We are working hand in hand with the Ohio Department of Health in developing these documents. So this is a joint website between the agencies. So this is sort of the one-stop shop for information on what the state of Ohio is doing with PFAS. So for the sampling project, we are sampling all community water systems and all non-transient, non-community systems. This ends up being over 1,500 systems. At this time, we are not sampling those consecutive systems, so those who purchase water from somebody who sells it. So we're just sampling the primary systems, if you will. But we did start sampling with schools and daycares and prioritize that work. We started sampling in February, and we almost got through all the schools and daycares before COVID shut us down. So we took a break for a couple months and then restarted sampling in the middle of June. We have been going gangbusters with sampling and are on track to complete sampling potentially as early as the end of this month. So making a lot of progress. I mentioned there are 6 compounds that we are testing for. And for each of these 6 compounds, the state has established action levels. And you can see that on this slide. It's also important to note that we have a reporting level of 5 for all the compounds except for Gen X, which is 25. And we are using contract labs and then follow-up sampling, any follow-up sampling after a high-level detection is being done at Ohio EPA's lab. So on that website, pfas.ohio.gov, there is a link to our interactive dashboard and map status. And so you can look, this is kind of the snapshot dashboard, which shows where have we completed testing. And this is out of date. It changes every day and shows how many systems we have tested. As of this morning, we have over 1,000 results for over 1,000 water systems out of the 1,563 posted. And then if you click on the test results tab on this page, you can drill down and click on actual results for all the systems that we are reporting on. So what are we going to be working on in the future? Well, obviously one of them is navigating COVID-19 operations and figuring out how to return to the new normal. We have been resuming some of our surveys. We did hybrid surveys, and prior to that, we did remote surveys, calling some of our smaller, simpler systems to complete our sanitary surveys. So transitioning, back to those in-person activities is obviously a priority for us. Responding to the lead and copper rule revisions is going to be very interesting to see what they come out with. And then as a state, we're going to have to work toward adopting those new federal requirements. So that'll be, I think, a big priority in 2021. Integration of asset management across all of our programs is definitely a priority for the division. I think evaluating what that first round of metrics tells us, and then looking big picture across the state, where the needs are, and then how do we line our funding and resources to help systems develop those asset management programs. And then again, emerging contaminants. And then a final note I'll make is we have come a long way in developing and strengthening our partnerships with our Ohio water systems and the facilities that we work with. Throughout COVID, we've been, at one point, we're meeting weekly with Core Water System Group, and intent to continue that on a less frequent basis, but just to utilize that partnership to design better rules up front and to develop some of our guidance in better partnership with our systems up front. So that's kind of the quick 5 to 8 minute snapshot of what's going on with the Division of Drinking Groundwaters. And there's my contact information.
Wow, thank you. Thank you, Amy. That was awesome. Very informative. To keep things moving, again, we'll address questions after all the chiefs have completed their presentation. So please continue to submit your questions, and we'll address them during the Q&A portion. So next up, we have our Chief of the Division of Surface Water, Tiffany Cadillac.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to start out talking about the Federal Navigable Waters Protection Rule. It was effective on June 22nd, where certain wetlands, and for us, that means our isolated wetlands program, and streams, which are typically our ephemeral streams that were historically regulated by EPA and the Army Corps, are no longer going to be defined as waters of the U.S. And that means that Ohio and many other states that have relied on delegated permitting authority for these can no longer issue Clean Water Act permits. And that's really our 401 program. So what does that mean for Ohio? We can use our own authority, and our state authority is 6111. We know in Ohio that we have over 36,000 miles of ephemeral streams throughout Ohio, and they help control runoff and erosion. We know that they reduce flooding potential, and we know that they help filter pollutants. So we felt it was important to continue the protection of ephemeral streams, and on June 25th, we issued a final combined general permit that includes ephemeral streams into our existing level 1 isolated wetlands general permit to ensure oversight. Here's a link to the website that has that information, and we also have the general permit at that link. We have the application, and we have a lot of Q&A questions that you guys might have process questions about. The next thing that we're working on is the Army Corps' nationwide permit, and I think that for any of you that's worked on the nationwide permit historically, it's typically good for 5 years. And so the latest one was issued in March of 17. We thought it would be effective through 2022. It's a really heavy lift to put one of these things together. But the Trump administration issued an executive order promoting energy independence and economic growth. And it requires the federal agencies to consider modifying existing regulations that potentially burden the development of produced energy resources such as oil, natural gas, and coal. So in light of that, they are looking to modify these 9 particular nationwide permits: maintenance, utility lines, hydropower, surface coal, commercial institutional developments, coal remining, underground coal mining, land-based renewable energy, and water-based renewable energy. We have yet to see a nationwide 51 or 52 in Ohio, but they're still on the list for modification. So USCP, or the Army Corps, issued a new rule for the nationwide permits for this revision. Here's the link that has the public notice, and it runs from September 15th to November 16th. And then you'll also want to be aware that there are regional conditions that were public noticed, and for Ohio, the regional Army Corps locations are Buffalo, Pittsburgh, and Huntington. They have issued regional conditions that are going to run through November 14th. And then we are now working on Ohio-specific 401 conditions for this new nationwide, and we hope to get those public noticed within the next couple of weeks. So if you are not on any of our listservs to get that information, please contact our 401 office. Now I have a poll. I'm very curious to see what the audience has. How many do you guys typically have projects that qualify for the 404, 401 nationwide permit specifically? And the answers are regularly, sometimes they're.
Okay, we have launched the polls. When this shows up on your screen, go ahead and make your selections. We'll give folks approximately 1 minute to go ahead and cast their vote. Okay, most folks have voted. We'll give it a few more seconds before we close, and then we will share the results. Okay, we're going to close the poll and share the results.
Okay, yeah, so it seems like, let me see if I can get control back. There we go. So it looks like about 40% of you do have some involvement with the nationwide permit. So I strongly encourage you to follow these changes. They are significant changes to the way things have normally been done. areas where there have typically been a 300 linear foot threshold requirement have now changed into a very convoluted acreage calculation. So I encourage folks to go in and look at that information. Oops. So I do want to talk quickly about the monitoring that we did this year. In our integrated report, we proposed that we would do all 23 large rivers throughout the state in the summer of 2020. However, due to COVID, we were unable to hire interns this year. So we were relying on our existing water quality staff, and we did not get out as early as we expected. So we only did the large rivers affiliated with the Ohio River Basin, and we plan to do the large rivers for the Lake Erie Basin in 2021. Our staff that typically would do the Lake Erie Basin large river work were up on Lake Erie doing their annual boat assessment work. We've also committed to do a Maumee Watershed TMDL to address the Lake Erie Western Basin rec and drinking water algae impairments. We're also working on the St. Joe River TMDL, the Black River TMDL, and we recently public noticed a multi-watershed bacteria TMDL. We do now have a website for the Maumee Watershed TMDL, and we are hoping to begin outreach efforts with that either this month or next month. If you're not on a listserv to be notified when we have outreach efforts for the Maumee TMDL or other Lake Erie TMDLs, please go on to our website and sign up for those. We are also doing virtual inspections, much like the other programs. We have focused on MPDS majors, minors, pretreatment, stormwater, and biosolids. We have also done a few 401 mitigation virtual inspections. And here's a plug for our e-business center. Again, it is really important for folks to, if things are high priority and need to be processed quickly, the best way for us to help you get permits issued quicker is to use our streams and ePay services. It allows for efficient processing. We have innovative smart forms that have built-in formatting and error validation. It results in less time between the receipt of the application to the processing of the application. The other great thing about using our e-business center is our staff are working at home. So if you submit this into the e-business center, we're getting it immediately, and the staff are getting it right at their homes. Otherwise, anything that gets sent into the mail is being checked once a week, and then we're having to scan those documents and email them down to our staff. So that can take some time. The same with e-payment service. It allows for immediate e-payment, and there are some of our programs that we can't even start review of your application until the fee is paid. And obviously we cannot issue the permit until the fee is paid. So encourage folks to use those, especially with staff working from home. And then lastly, I just wanted to discuss the fact that US EPA has come out with a new significant noncompliance for an NPDES permit advisory. We have sent this advisory to all of our NPDES permit holders, and whether or not they're currently in violation or they're doing well. And just a notification that US EPA is watching Ohio's SNC list. And I think that they are trying to do a national effort to get the SNC rate down significantly. Right now, I think nationally it's about 25%, and they want to get down to around 15%. Over the last 5 years, we've done a really good job in knocking down the SNC rate. But if you regulate or if you assist a facility in their compliance efforts, please talk to them about the advisory we sent to them and whether or not they were in SNC, and see if you can help them. Dan, I think that's all I have.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Tiffany. And again, to keep things, we'll address the questions when we get to the end of these presentations. So Please continue to submit your questions and we will address them during the Q&A portion. And now for our last presenter for this morning's session, the Chief of our Division of Air Pollution Control, Bob Hodenbosey.
Good morning, all. Thank you for attending this session. We're going to discuss some of the items that the Division of Air Pollution Control is currently doing. And our division has many different activities, primarily meeting the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. We do air permitting, we look at air toxics. We do a good deal of air monitoring. We have compliance activities, enforcement activities. We oversee that program in Northeast Ohio, and we have some other smaller but important programs also. So I'll talk about how air quality is improving, some of our goals, and some of our challenges coming up. First, improving air quality. The US EPA promulgated a 2015 ozone standard, and we're going to be discussing that in a few minutes here. The Columbus area was the first area in the country to be redesignated for attainment of that standard. So that was a significant accomplishment to get done. And that was done back in 2018. So we're glad that that got completed. We worked on the Steubenville area and got that area redesignated to attainment for sulfur dioxide. And we were able to get for the 2012 PM 2.5 standard, with particulate matter less than 2.5 micron, designated to attainment. And that was the first area in Region 5 to be redesignated for that pollutant. So this shows how air quality is improving based on the air quality index that sometimes shows that is displayed on various TV shows and newscasts. And you can see overall, over time, since 2000, we've made some very good improvements in improving air quality as we go on. However, the however is for the ozone standard, the more restrictive ozone standard, which is 70 parts per billion, we will not meet that standard in the Cleveland area. We needed to meet it by the end of this year, and we are not attaining the standard based on the number of exceedances that we've experienced this year in the Cleveland area. And we also do not qualify for a one-year extension. There is some provisions in the Clean Air Act that allow for a one-year extension, and because of the number of exceedances we've had in the area, we are not eligible for an extension also. Cincinnati is a very similar story. We will not attain the standard by the end of the year. We have exceedances at 3 monitors in the Cincinnati area. And also, we do not qualify for an extension in the Cincinnati area. And this illustrates for the different areas in the state. And you can see that in Columbus and Dayton, we are achieving the standard, but in the areas of Cincinnati and Cleveland, we are not. The 75 was the 2008 ozone standard, and then US EPA adopted a more stringent standard in 2015 of 70. So we met the 2008 standard, but we have not achieved the 2015 ozone standard. So what does that mean? That means that we, in all likelihood, are on a path to get bumped up from what's called a marginal non-attainment area to a moderate non-attainment area under the Clean Air Act. And that means that there are additional mandatory controls put in place. First is reasonably available control technology for nitrogen oxide emissions. That affects primarily industrial sources. RACT for volatile organic compound sources. There's control technology guidelines that we have to implement, and there's something called non-CTG RACT for major stationary sources. There's additional requirements for permitting new and modified sources in the Cleveland and Cincinnati non-attainment areas, including a higher offset ratio, and we reset the baseline for where those offsets can be attained. And finally, and a requirement to have a vehicle emission testing program like eCheck, but eCheck has evolved since it started in the Cleveland area, and right now it's only onboard diagnostics. We no longer have any tailpipe tests. And this would be the very last control program to be implemented. In discussions with US EPA, they are currently saying that this may not need to be implemented until 2026, and if we can attain by that time, then we wouldn't have to implement that. This is a stair-step chart that shows under the Clean Air Act how the non-attainment areas work their way up from marginal, moderate, serious, severe, and as you go up that those stairs, you have to implement additional requirements. So we want to attain the standard. We wanted to have it remain marginal, but we're getting bumped up to moderate. We certainly want to avoid serious non-attainment. The timing of that, we would expect it in February 2022, and the attainment date overall for meeting the air quality standards would be 2024. So that's a quick ozone update. One of our challenges for the program is we are rapidly losing fee revenue. Coal-fired power plants have closed and are closing. That means our Title V fee program is dropping, but overall our workload is not decreasing. This is a chart that shows you how our fees are decreasing over time. We've lost a significant amount of money to fund our program, but also we've tightened our belts over time. We have reduced staffing. We've gotten some additional obligations in terms of taking on the asbestos program from ODH, but that program is fully funded. So that's not an issue, but it does reflect we are doing more, but we certainly have less staff to get that work done. Now, wrapping up in terms of program challenges during this pandemic situation, Director Stevenson wanted to make sure we kept the staff safe. Only essential employees have access to the office, and the safety protocols are needed for any field or even office activity to make sure we're following what we need to when we do go into the office. One of the big things that we needed that was a priority is to get the air quality network going. It was shut down for a small period of time. We had to make sure we put in protocols to make sure that people stayed safe while they were doing this air quality monitoring. One of the things that we learned is that after you shut down a very complex system, it's real difficult to get it going again, and a lot of small hiccups. But currently I would say we are running 100% of our network right now based on what the levels, the public health advisory levels and how we've set this up. So we're in pretty good shape now. Other things, routine inspections are not being performed, as you've heard from the other chiefs, but we do have all the reports coming in being reviewed by staff. For the air program, many stack tests have been delayed. However, we recently received approval to start to witness stack tests. We have that protocol approved. So in some limited cases, we are starting to witness stack tests. We are conducting virtual inspections, again, like the other programs. Most of the staff is working from home. And with that, I will wrap it up and turn it back over to Dan.
Excellent. Thank you, Bob. And we're going to begin answering questions submitted during today's presentation. You can still submit questions through the questions pane in your attendee control panel, and we'll do our best to answer as many questions as possible in the few minutes that we have left. If we don't get to your question during the Q&A portion, we will reach out to you via email following today's webinar. So I have a question that came in for Melissa, Chief of the Division of Environmental Response and Revitalization. Melissa, the question is, you had mentioned the hazardous waste rules might change. Where's the best place to find out more information about those upcoming rule changes?
Well, that's a great question. They actually have changed. They changed on October 5th, so Monday. And knowing that those rules were coming out, we did a presentation during this conference. And we're going to put the link for that presentation up in the handout section or somewhere in the chat here so that everybody can access that. In addition to that, feel free to reach out to your district or central office representatives if you have additional questions after seeing that presentation.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Melissa. Another question we have is for Vlad, Chief of the Division of Materials and Waste Management. So Vlad, the question is, how has COVID impacted the state of recycling in Ohio?
Well, since about March, it's kind of an interesting question. Since beginning of March, when everyone was sent home, there's been kind of a marketable shift in the recycling industry and the materials that flow through the recycling industry in Ohio. Since everyone went home and kind of left the office building, and a lot of the manufacturing has also kind of been impacted and slowed down during that time period. The recycling streams have kind of tipped, I guess, the balance. Whereas before they had a fair amount of, or were getting a fair amount of commercial recyclables. During the whole COVID lockdown, they were getting much more on the residential side. So things like, glass and aluminum cans, some cardboard as well, and plastics, those did go up, where on the commercial paper side, that went down. And that was kind of the initial balance, but slowly over time, as businesses started to open back up, some of the commercial side has kind of rebounded, and we're seeing more and more commercial recyclables flowing through the infrastructure right now. So we're getting pretty close to where we were before, but there was kind of a learning curve there at the beginning.
Excellent. Thank you, Vlad. Next question we have is for Amy, our Chief of Division of Drinking and Groundwaters. The question for you, Chief Clyde, is water system regionalization still a priority for funding?
Yes, that's a great question. That is something that has been on our radar for a long time. And so we've been working with DEFA to get some prioritized funds and some principal forgiveness targeted toward those regionalization efforts. And I see that continuing into the future. The other thing that we're seeing is the impact of our asset management program and the true costing of water from delivery, from production to delivery, from source water to operators and everything. We're starting to see some of those equations in the decision to regionalize or not shift. And as people really recognize what the true cost is to maintain their own system. So, and regionalization is an issue that I know is a priority for Director Stevenson. And I think we're going to have additional discussions about, for statewide initiative about what our options are going forward. Definitely still on the radar, though. Great question.
Great. Thanks, Amy. Next question we have, I pulled one out for the Division of Surface Water, Tiffany Kavalak. This question is, when will the small MS4 general permit be reissued?
So we just went through a 45-day public comment period and held a public hearing and then accepted comments a week past the public hearing. And we are now working on the numerous response to comments. That takes some time to respond to every comment that came in, and that needs to be done before we issue the permit. So I am hopeful that we will be able to get this issued by the end of the month or early in November. Thank you.
Excellent. And it looks like out of time, so any of the other questions that we did not get to, we will be sure to respond after the fact. We will be following up with an email with you later. So thank you, Chiefs. Thank you for your informative presentations. Thank you for keeping it on time. And thank you everyone for attending this morning's webinar. Once you leave today's webinar, you will receive a survey, and we value your feedback and would greatly appreciate it if you let us know how we're doing and let us know if there's anything else that we can do to further assist you. A certificate of attendance and a recording of this event will be included via email about a day or so after this session. Join us this afternoon at 2 p.m. for our panel discussion highlighting successes, opportunities, and challenges of successful sustainability programs at 3 Ohio organizations. If any of you deal with stormwater regulations, I highly encourage you to check out our session at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, where we will go over the elements of the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan and how to avoid mistakes. To close out our virtual compliance assistance conference tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m., we are excited to have US EPA Region 5 representatives presenting on spill prevention, control, and countermeasures, or SPCC requirements. If you have not already registered for these sessions, please check out our conference agenda attached as a handout to today's presentation. And with that, thank you for joining this morning and have a great day.